Well, hello. This is going to be a fix/rant video. I'll try to record this in one go. First, let's quickly fix one thing. Right now, if we launch the lobby map without going through the login process, we crash the launched instance of the game. And if you were to launch it in the editor, it would crash the entire editor. To prevent that from happening, we can do one thing. Whenever we have logic that requires the user to be logged into EOS in order to use it, such as getting the game session info or updating the lobby, etc., we can add a check to ensure the user is logged in before executing that logic. Here in the lobby widget, on widget construction, we get the session info to update our UI. To do that, we're getting the current session info, and this node crashes the game if the user is not logged in when we try to use it. To not crash the game, we can get the player controller, and from the player controller, get the user's unique net ID. This will be null and give a false bool if the user is not logged in or if we're launching in the editor. Can use a branch and only run the EIK nodes that can crash the editor if the condition is true. Now that I think about it, this could have been collapsed into a function and added to a function library, or made into a global macro to reuse. Well, something to keep in mind for next time. Now it should not crash the game. So, why do we do this? Let's say you want to test the gameplay map, but it has session update or get session info logic. However, you don't want to go through the login process. You just want to see if an ability fires a projectile or test other gameplay functionality. In this case, we would have the checks before those nodes that require the user to be logged in to make sure we are logged in before executing that logic. This allows us to test the other gameplay features without needing to go through the full login process. But that, of course, removes any functionality that those nodes provide. And now it's ranting time about casting. I got a comment on my video that I use too many interfaces and I should just do casting instead, which is absurd. First, by using interfaces, you don't create dependencies and you don't need to store hard references. Instead, you can store them as the native parent classes. However, there was one valid point about having somewhat duplicated interface functions doing the same task. That is something to consider when designing interfaces. Okay, let's fix that before continuing the rant. So we had two functions for getting and setting the nickname, one in each of two different interfaces. Let's rename the lobby player state interface to be the player data interface instead. I did not remove lobby from the name. I will do that later in the video. And not forget, just in case, to fix up the redirectors for the folder where you renamed the item. Alright, now we will replace the game instance's getPlayerNickname call with a new call to the player data interface instead. Can right-click on the interface function and find references, then click the search icon to find all usages of this interface function. Now replace the message to the game instance interface with a call to the player data interface instead. Also, as I use acronyms for faster finding and for overall convenience, I will replace LPS with PD for player data. And to avoid confusion, we'll rename this function to initialize player data instead. This is blueprint code if you are using the game mode version for updating joining player names. We'll remove it after replace all set and get player nicknames. Now that we've replaced all the calls to the player data interface, we can remove those functions from the game instance interface. And now we need to implement the player data interface on the game instance in order to do what the removed functions used to do. In my head, I had renamed the interface to the player data interface, but I had not removed lobby from the name. Now you see my confusion. Now that the interface has been properly named, we can go ahead and implement those interface events. Also, I will categorize those into the player data category. The lobby player state has it all as it was. Sometimes checking is good, as renaming stuff can break references. Let's see if everything still works. I will log in with the device ID, as that's where I can change the nickname and see if all the sets and gets work properly. All seems to be working. Now, let's remove the game mode updating connected players logic, which is a duplicate if we're using a timer event in the widget to do that. We can safely delete those if we're updating through the widget that loops the player states. We can delete the controller interface to update the widget, as we won't be using it anymore. This is a timer event that was looping through the interface event to refresh the nicknames. As we just reused this event, now we can create a native event to do that, since we won't have a need for the interface anymore. Don't forget to update the timer event that is used to update the nicknames. We can just delete this now. Now, rant time. The commenter, who has now deleted their comments, said that premature optimization is the root of all evil. What a phrase. And they said I should just cast on construct and save a reference. But that's exactly what I want to avoid. Hard references create dependencies and make the project less modular with interconnected code. I will leave links to videos that explain it better than I could. Personally, I'll just show one thing. Let's create an actor, and that actor will have casting to our character. Now, let's check how much memory this actor uses once it gets loaded into the level. Now, That actor size is 4.2 kilobytes. And let's say that on begin play, we get the player controller, get the controlled pawn, and cast to our third-person character. We won't even save the reference. It's just casting, right? Nothing will happen. It's still 21 kilobytes, right? Oh my, where is all of this coming from now? It's 110 megabytes. That escalated quickly. Not even need to save the reference. Oh look, it's just 7 kilobytes now. Man, casting does make yo mama fat.